Hello, you're listening to the Liberty Tactics show over on Critical Mass Radio with James and Lou. It's July 13th, and this week we'll be getting an update on Roger Hayes. We'll be talking to Olympic whistleblower Ben Fellows, and we have writer, director and producer Chris Everard on as well to talk about a whole host of issues and about the Secret Society Network. So stay tuned.
Hi John Hurst, how you doing?
Sorry about the delay, but there was flooding in Hereford and the skies opened on the way back.
You're not insinuating that there's been a lot of rain? Because that would be a whacked out conspiracy theory.
Well, we've been visiting Bodmin Manor, as you probably know, and Lana and Paddy, their crops aren't growing satisfactorily. I mean, a lot of people are saying that. It's going to be a problem, isn't it?
Super. So, John, you've been sort of representing Roger. Can you? First...
Well, amongst others, it's a group effort. We all bring our different life experiences, don't we? So nobody knows everything.
Yeah. Can you give everybody, like the listeners who aren't aware of you, a little bit of an insight into what you do, John, please?
Well, I came over from the dark side, I'm afraid. I was a policeman for 30 years. I managed to survive long enough to get my pension.
Yeah.
Not in the physical sense, but I woke up about 12, 15 years ago. So what did it for me was the right to bear arms. On a daily basis, people were assaulted by criminals, and in earlier times, they were basically shot or stabbed with a sword or some other pointy thing. The public in England and Britain have been conned to think that we're somehow strangely pacifists, and we never actually used to defend ourselves against criminals. And it's absolute nonsense. Up until 1969, you could get a firearms certificate for a gun for self-defence, pistol or whatever, with no trouble at all. Shotguns were sold like air guns until 1968. Every country post office would have one behind the counter. So, strangely enough, our robberies on country post offices didn't happen very often. A postman used to carry guns to defend posts, that sort of thing. It's completely hidden history that nobody knows about. 1969. The Home Secretary of the day issued a policy, it was secret for 20 years, a policy instruction to Chief Constables to stop issuing firearms certificates for self-defence. So a lot of people suddenly said, well, I'm really interested in target shooting or hunting, carried on. But the right to bear arms is still there, it's just hidden.
Yeah. And as we know, the greatest dictatorships and fascist states on the planet and throughout history have been ones with no right to bear arms. So I think it's
they've had
they act when.
Yeah.
I mean, definitely. I think everybody has the right. We're seeing it a lot, and that's one of the things. I'm all about the right to bear arms, because just the practicality of it. You've got England, which is completely disarmed, and we're a nation of victims. And anybody that does stand up for their rights, they get thrown in jail.
Yeah.
Well, there's a man called Bapty that has been manufacturing guns. He's an engineer as well. A man called Bapty and his son. If you do a web search for them, basically every time they manufacture one to prove the point, they get locked up.
Right.
And he's a little known hero, the Baptys. So there we are. Just get a little story. It's 10 years ago, and the Metropolitan Police form a violent crime reduction. Have a violent crime reduction policy initiative, and they set up an office staffed by Chief Inspector and various other people. And I ring them up and say, well, what about the right to bear arms? Now, I was talking to a young female detective constable, and there was a shocked silence. What? Oh, people defending themselves. So she turned and spoke to somebody else in the room, and a hubbub developed. And you hear people saying, what, no, not having that. And eventually the Chief Inspector was called to the phone, and he said, that's not the sort of thing we were actually looking for. Bye. So that's how the police approached the right to bear arms.
Mm-hmm.
Post 1969. You're quite right. The 60s were an interesting time. A lot of subversion went on, of course, in the run-up to joining the EU. And that was the hidden agenda.
Yeah.
So, okay, so now you work...
Well, I don't work because I don't get paid for it, put it that way.
Yeah.
When I was a policeman, I was a Mackenzie friend. So Mackenzie friend is elected. I did two postings of 3 years, and then I retired because I had other commitments. And slightly unusual in the police because you're defending rather than prosecuting. So if a policeman was accused of something, I would assist him as a Mackenzie friend, and I've acted to assist the defence in courts, from magistrates to coroners to Crown Court and so on, and the Old Bailey as well. Mm-hmm. So it's not many policemen actually go down the defending as well as the prosecuting route. So it's a little bit unusual. And when you retire, there's a few short resettlement courses, and they say, well, do a CV, because nobody likes doing a CV, do they? Don't like talking about themselves. They force you to do a CV, and then you pick out skills that you've got that might be usable outside. So the rest is history. There we go.
Okay, so what is the latest with Roger, John?
Well, the state of play. Now, bear in mind, I've been out this afternoon. I haven't seen the press release that Brian was going to put out.
No, actually, I haven't had a chance to have a look at anything at either. It's been a bit of a hectic day.
Right, I'll have a quick look, see whether he sent it, because Roger's not a boss, because we're a narco syndicalist collective. No, actually, we work on the cell system, so nobody can pick us off.
Yeah, so who's behind it? I mean, there's yourself, there's Danny Bamping,
yeah.
Chris Jarvis as well is all doing an awful lot. Yvonne Stewart Taylor, and who else is up there?
Well, there's too many to mention. A lot of them are pseudonyms on Skype, so some of them I know to talk to, but I wouldn't recognise them if I bumped into the street.
Right, I see.
But the bottom line is this: bearing in mind that nobody knows everything. Chris Jarvis has got a claim to fame. He's the only person who successfully, only private individual successfully has got a habeas corpus upheld. Habeas corpus means produce the body, and you go to the High Court and they tell the judge what's gone wrong and why this person shouldn't be locked up. And if the judge agrees, then they let go. Look, that was Norman Scar. Rusty and Malcolm Massey weren't successful. The reason is, that in terms of the other side, they were lawfully locked up because they'd been to court convicted. There was a warrant, but Norman was in his position. So Chris is a centre of excellence, shall we say? And one of the important things that he did is because it went to the High Court, the Queen's Bench Division, it set a precedent for the lower courts. And Malcolm and Chris, there's an echo. Is that you or me?
It might be us.
Okay, just mute your microphone and I'll rub it on for a bit. Chris Jarvis set the precedent that the Mackenzie friend gets to speak, because traditionally a Mackenzie friend in court helps prepare the case, knows about it, but lawyers hold on to their right of audience, it's called, don't they? Yeah. And the last thing they want is private individuals speaking up because it'll put them out of a job. So Chris Jarvis established the precedent that Mackenzie friends can speak. So that's a very useful step forward.
Definitely.
And fair play. So the state of play with Roger is Roger's been a lawful rebel for years. Yeah. And I don't know if you've seen my video on Prana at the roadside. Occupy auto lifts. Have you seen that one?
No, I don't think I have, John. No.
Okay. Well, cut a long story short. I went into one and gave a little speech because we called in there on the way back from Liverpool. Yeah. And it goes like this: our ancestors weren't stupid. They knew that kings would from time to time be oppressive. They probably didn't know what a psychopath was, but they know what one looked like. So they took precautions. And the important thing is, this is an ancient common law remedy. It's called diffidatio. And what that is, it's the right to defiance. And it can come about like this. Allegiance to the lord of your manor was achieved like this. At the age of 12, a boy would be taken to the manor court where the lord was sitting, and he'd be expected to swear fealty to that lord. And then there was a chain of hierarchy. So the lord swore loyalty to the earl, and the earl swore allegiance to the king. So there was a food chain. The thing was, this was a contract, because what the individual did, he swore allegiance in return for protection and justice. If the protection and justice wasn't offered, in other words, if the law broke the contract, the person, the boy, not now the man, could withdraw his allegiance, and basically had to tell the king about it. Now, there's some dispute about how long it takes. Some authorities say a year, and some say only 40 days. In case of Magna Carta, that's where the 40 days came from in relation to warning the king to sort himself out. So if you search Diffidatio, you'll find many references to it, and the most important one, in actual fact, I think, is Blackstone's Commentaries on the Laws of England, which is the authoritative textbook that courts still quote today. So I've written a couple of articles about it, and I'll put links in shortly. And the idea is that Roger as an individual was rebelling. Now, if you'd spoken to me 10 years ago, I would have said, well, no, you can't do that. And the reason I would have said that is, if you look in legal textbooks, they'll refer you to a case called Casement. Right. And Casement is he's an Irishman. It's the First World War. For whatever reason, he joins the British Army. He gets captured by the Germans. They interview all their prisoners, and they discover he's what we now call an IRA man or a Republican. Yeah. So they say to him, "Well, you don't really like the British, do you? Tell you what, we've got other Irishmen in our camp here that agree the same thing. How about we form you into an army unit to go and fight the Brits?" So he went along with it for a bit, but unfortunately the Germans lose the war and he gets captured and he gets found out. So he's charged with treason, and he argued that he argued duress to circumstances. He said, "Well, the Germans threatened me if I didn't do this, and that was my excuse." Now, that's the defence of duress to circumstances. Duress is the concept of you can commit a minor crime in order to prevent the worst things happening, and it goes all the way from a policeman driving his car through a red traffic light on his way to an emergency call. He does the deed, he drives through the red traffic light, but he's saving lives, so he hasn't got any intent to break the law there. Through to self-defence, if somebody's bearing down on you with a big club saying he's going to hit you, you can defend yourself against him. And there are three things in actual fact you can defend. You can defend your life, you can defend your property, and you can defend your liberty. And liberty is something that an invader would take away. If the Germans had won in 1940, for example, hopefully I wouldn't be here because my father was a policeman. He would have put up a fight. But the rest of you will be speaking in German, as they say. Yeah. So let's go back to Casement. So Casement gets arrested by the British and charged with treason, and he argues, well, they made me do it. Well, that established that the defence of duress doesn't cover treason. It does cover anything less than treason, but not treason and murder. So eventually, Casement was hung. Well, I later found what really happened. So the judgment that was relied on in the textbook says the duty of allegiance is indefeasible and perpetual. Indefeasible and perpetual. I later found that Casement was more or less a political prisoner, and he was quickly executed before he could appeal. So he didn't get his day in court properly, did he? Now, this diffidatio concept shows that whatever judge was sitting in 1919 was clearly wrong, wasn't he? Because our common law right is to withdraw your allegiance, and that's in the textbooks. That's the precedent. So I now know that the free men are right. Right. But they have to go through the formalities, and they have to do it publicly, and they have to give the Queen 40 days. And a lot of them have done that, of course, haven't they?
No. Yeah. When he went up in court, when he was in court, John, did what was it the judge actually said to him when he that's the difficulty. So Danny Bamping saw him and took an affidavit, and fair play to him, it covered all the points, but what we really wanted was a statutory declaration which is stronger, and we wanted a statutory declaration to confirm that Roger had been in lawful rebellion for a long time, and that he was claiming it as his defence to all his liability orders. I think he got 3, 4, 5, I don't know. And the reason you can use this defence to being issued with a liability order is this: it's not just individuals that can declare defiance. Barons and lords can do it for the whole country. Right. Yeah, because at the end of the day, members of the House, all members of the House Lords are barons, because the junior rank is baron, and then one up is earl, and then there's viscount, and then marquess, and so on. But in the same way as all members of the police force are constables, although some have ranks, sergeants and inspectors, and so on, they're all constables, except the chief constable, incidentally, because he's a magistrate, and he hasn't got a policeman's power of arrest. There we are. They never leave the office, so it doesn't matter. So as far as Roger's concerned, he was entitled to claim diffidatio, being in rebellion, and also he became aware of the Barons Committee in 2001. So I don't know if you're familiar with that. Should I talk about that quickly?
Yeah.
Okay. Go back to good old Blackstone's commentaries on the laws of England. It's got the rights of Englishmen. Short chapter. Well, it's a big chapter and there's a summary at the end. So the rights of Englishmen. Now, the rights of Englishmen are indefeasible and perpetual, which means they're inherited and each is expected to preserve them and pass them on intact. And you mentioned the right to bear arms. The American Second Amendment says the right to bear arms shall not be infringed because common law rights don't go away just because somebody's breached them; they just get infringed. Okay, so Blackstone's commentary on the rights of Englishmen. Well, the first thing is, if you've got a problem, you can go to a court. You can petition the Crown for redress of grievance in a court. My neighbour is a noisy neighbour. Well, you can go to the court and get a magistrate's order, can't you? Somebody's robbed me. You're expected to deal with yourself first, but if you don't, then you can go to court. I'll just talk that through quickly. It goes like this. Everyone's got a common law duty to maintain the Queen's peace or the King's peace. A theft or a robbery is a breach of the Queen's peace. You're expected to do something about it yourself. You don't have to do it on your own. You can raise the hue and cry, traditionally by voice or horn, or nowadays by radio or telephone. So you raise the hue and cry, and all able-bodied male adults in the vicinity have got a duty to join the chase. So let's imagine there's a Saxon village and somebody steals a pig and the pig owner says, "Stop thief," and blows a horn. Everybody in earshot, every male within earshot has got to join in and catch it.
Right.
Catch it. If the thief escapes beyond the parish boundary, then the parish is fined half the value of the pig. So it's a financial penalty for those that don't do it. This was tested in 1999. And it's called the Diffin case. So it's Essex. There's a nightclub. There's a policeman, and he's on the opposite side of the road, the entrance to the nightclub. And a scrap develops, and he looks at it, and he makes a decision, and he says, he doesn't say anything. He adjusted his helmet. Adjusted his helmet strap, because they had helmet straps in those days, and walked off in a northerly direction at 2.5 miles an hour. Now, unfortunately for P.T. Diffin, the scrap got worse, and somebody died. So there was a big hoo-ha, and he was charged with neglect of duty. And what he did, it confirmed everyone's got a duty to maintain the Queen's peace. And the important thing is here, the policeman's obligation to maintain the Queen's peace is because he's a citizen. The fact that he's a policeman is irrelevant. Everybody has got a duty to maintain the Queen's peace. And the Diffin case from 1999, if anybody wants to look it up, confirms it.
Yeah.
So that's the important thing. So what Roger's doing is, of course, arguing that our common law rights are being infringed because you defend life, property, and liberty.
Right.
And he's doing it by means of withholding his council tax. Now, there's a few extra things like the war crimes business, isn't there? Which is the other side of foolishly written Act of Parliament that says supporting terrorism is a crime. Well, of course, Roger doesn't want to support terrorism. One of the issues, in fact, is the armed forces. Once the armed forces ceased to be conscripted and they became a state militia, well, in fact, they became a state mercenary force, didn't they?
Yeah.
And that is the problem. So they can recruit people that will do that as told.
Can I just ask? When did he answer yes to being Roger of the Hayes family?
What I think he did. Bear in mind, I haven't spoken to him because a lot of people. I mean, as far as that sort of business, the free man, people go into it and come out the other side. I suspect, but Roger is deeply into it at the moment, and he's quite right. And Seska Kuvi and all that business is true. So,
can you hear us, John? John's gone.
Oh, is that better?
Oh, he's back again.
Yeah. Can you just give an invitation to how long I've got? Because I'm notorious with rabbiting on.
Yeah, no, John, what we'll do is we've just got Ben on at the moment because we don't think we can hear you. And what we'll do is hopefully we'll have time at the end and we'll just pick up on this if that's all right.
Okay, I'll send you a couple of links across
Brilliant.
from Roger's Facebook page.
Fabulous.
Thanks a lot, John.
Thanks, John.
Okay.
Hi, Ben.
Hi guys, how are you?
We're fine. How are you?
Yes, I'm very well, thank you. It's all very interesting about G4S, isn't it? What's going on?
Well, it's amazing, isn't it?
I was watching the news. I took microphone. I took off for a couple of days, far away from any news and radio and that, thankfully. And when I came back, it was all up in the air about G4S and how they couldn't have enough trained of the highly trained standard personnel, and that they'd have to get in an extra
3,500.
From the military, so making up about 20,000. But they were still going to pay G4S the full.
They're still going to pay, and somebody mentioned in the Commons, one of the MP backbenchers, I think it was Conservative, saying, Theresa May, is she going to get back, recuperate some of the money?
Some of the loss.
Yeah,
the loss. And she says no.
No, of course not.
She's not. She's going to carry on with LOCOG, and she's going to carry on with G4S.
But not one of these people, the news channels, mention the fact that, like Ben's research going undercover, and sort of, this broke weeks ago. And I'm wondering, why has this come out? Was this inevitable that it was going to come out and we were going to have more military?
I don't know. What was fascinating, though, is that yesterday there was an article from Sky News, and it was almost Ben's story, word for word, bar that this guy said he had military training. And I even read it to you, didn't I, Ben? And you confirmed, that's my story.
Yeah.
So what do you think that was somebody there? Do you think that was a legitimate story?
Well, look, yes, quite possibly, because what they were saying was quite, accurate. Other than the fact that they were being told, to go around the corner and collect their uniforms, it actually doesn't work like that. It was an email. You got an email later, but anyway, and also the fact that even though he had military training, he was trying to say that you could shove a 9mm gun down your sock, which of course is impossible. Anyone who knows anything about guns. But I mean, look, whoever it was, the stories come out. What kind of disappoints me about it? There's more revelations to come because but what disappoints me about it is the fact that you, Tony Gosling, Alex Jones, Paul Watson, you guys are the ones who've broken this story, and Brian Gerrish, of course, and the UK column. You guys broke this story, and you're just not being recognised in the mainstream media. And I think,
but that's the thing is, we don't. That's the whole point. We don't really want to be recognised with the mainstream media, Ben. I mean, that's fine. The story at least is getting out. I know you've just wanted to get to the mainstream for the simple fact that to alert people as the lax in security. There's going to be many people from other countries, as well as people from all over England, going to this event, and they should have been aware. And at least I suppose it has come out at the end of the day. I mean, no one's looking for recognition with regards to it. It's just the fact that Ian Crane has been talking about this for many years, and I know you and him are going to be doing a talk in London on Wednesday the 25th, I believe. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
And Ian's been talking about it for a long time. When your story came out, we'd just been watching these videos with the similarities between 9/11 about works being done underneath the station, a bit like how the work was being done underneath the towers at the time. And then your revelation comes out sort of like the following day, but with the uniforms going missing, the people can't speak English, photographs being taken, and it was just all a hit in the face really, because we've been looking into it only that a couple of days before, and then you come out with that. So
yeah, I mean, look, the thing is that I've been speaking to a senior manager at G4S since Wednesday, and he told me on Wednesday morning that actually they're not sure. It's not 3,500 troops that's needed. They are short 9,000 security staff. And what he felt was going to happen was that they were going to bring in these 3,500, and then over the next few days, weeks, in the run-up to it, they would then increase the number of military that's needed. So that was quite interesting, which I found out. And then, of course, the story broke Wednesday afternoon. But what's been good about this is that now it has hit the mainstream, that the police in Surrey have dropped G4S's contract to run their services, and the West Midlands Police have suspended G4S for running the backroom services. So the privatisation of the police force actually we've managed to slow down. If not, stop, at least with G4S, which is really exciting, I think, which is good news.
So what's the latest with you, Ben? Have you had any more contact with G4S? Do they know, have they realised it's you that's been coming out and started all this?
Yeah, they have. They've kicked me off the G4S intranet.
Oh, I bet you're gutted.
I know. I tried to get into it to look at some stuff, and my account has mysteriously disappeared. I've also written to Keith Vaz as well, and Philip Hollowbone MP, who I think is the Conservative MP that you were talking about. And I've basically said, hey, look, if you want more information, I'm here. I have it. We had the story weeks ago, which and we helped break it. Yeah. And I'm prepared to sit in front of a Commons Select Committee and take an oath and tell the story as it is, which I think is important if that's what they want. And they probably won't do anything, but at least, I've sent the emails, I've written to them.
Yeah, well, it seems that they're sort of spinning it just that G4S wasn't capable of getting enough staff trained to
that's
high
how they're
levels.
making it out.
That's what they're spinning it to. They weren't actually going to anything that was into the incompetency of them. Yeah. Which I thought was quite funny, seeing as, G4S are renowned to be incompetent. And it was all just about logistics. They just weren't logistically able
not the
to,
numbers.
Poor G4S sort of thing. And you would have thought that over the many different media outlets that we've got, if they're all independently trying to find the true news story, they'd be looking at, the fact that they've been consistent with being incompetent in so many different factors, and they were all following the line of it was just logistics,
Yeah, but that's
and we're just going to have to get the troops in for the logistics of it.
Yeah, but that's what these guys do. The mainstream media, all they're there to do is they get sent a press release by G4S, they then put it into their own words, and then they repeat it. I mean, I've worked in newsrooms. I worked in Central Television newsroom for a long time. And I was, and all they did really was get press releases and spin them into their own words and then send them out again. Yeah. And this is what's happened here. So it doesn't surprise me that they're onto that. I mean, G4S is not, it's not about them not being able to get the people. It was the fact that the training course itself wasn't designed properly. They only started recruiting in January. Now, if anybody does the math about how many people you need to get through between January and July, everybody knows the math doesn't work. You can't train enough people to get 10,400 in under 6 months. It's impossible, So they knew that going into this, and I think because they've been paid 283 million, and the managers have now had to pay. It's gone from 53 million, the managers' fees, and Locog has just upped it to 60 million. This to me, it just looks like a bank robbery, and they never had any intention, I don't think, of supplying enough staff. They just wanted the money.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. It seems like the military being so heavily involved has always been a fundamental cornerstone in the. I mean that seems to be pretty much right from the get-go. But at the same time, right, we're going to have the military doing the majority of it, but let's extort as much money additionally out of the public as possible. So we'll get G4S in. They can come in, take a bit of flack for incompetent, not being competent enough to get it done, and then we'll still have the military in, because it just seems like you couldn't try hard enough to make such a poor result that they've had. Any other person that was a private contractor that was coming into something like this would be so professional, at least trying. It just seems like it was an afterthought. They were just in there to skim some more money off the top, to give the illusion that there was.
But they're everywhere anyway. They're doing the transport for the prisons, aren't they? Yeah. Somebody said G4S came round and read their meters, their electric meters. Yeah. They're doing that. They're doing the transport. I don't know if is it them that are looking at doing more administrative roles within the police force as well.
G4S, feel us up at the airport and sort of take over the TSA of America. We can have G4S, and they can incompetently feel us up at the airport, to find weapons of mass destruction.
So what's the latest you've heard anyway, Ben? What's the latest?
Well, the latest is that they're 9,000 people short. I mean, so this 3,500 troops is ridiculous. And basically what you're seeing is a damage limitation exercise, basically. That the shares of G4S, incidentally, have dropped. They had their biggest fall today than they've ever had, which is interesting. So look, I mean, they're 9,000 people short, which means they only did train 1,400 people. We've got stories coming out that police officers were not given jobs and then were sent accreditation through, which is exactly what I was kind of saying. Those stories where people were given accreditations wrongly, so he had access to the entire Olympic Park, but he didn't actually have a job. These are just some of the stories that are coming out, and it's crazy. And I think now the floodgates have opened. What people have realised, and I think which is what is great in a way, and what we've all started, is that people have realised that G4S can't do the security for a sporting event. Let us not forget the Olympics is a sporting event. It's 4 weeks, Paralympics and the Olympics. They can't organise a sporting event. Yes, it's a lot of people. It's not particularly complicated because there's other security services in there. You've just got to liaise with them. That's fine. That's an upper management position problem. But the actual general dealing with the public isn't very hard. They could have started this a year ago, a year and a half ago recruiting. They just didn't do it. So people have realised they can't organise the sporting event, so therefore they have no business in actually having important public sector roles in this country, or any country for that matter.
Mm-hmm. Well, because usually when you're in the private sector, you have to have a performance that justifies your payment. And what we've got these days with, a lot of public-private partnerships and all that sort of thing is a lot of select corporations that get funneled vast amounts of money, but their actual performance is subpar or, lower. And that sort of is becoming more and more prevalent in that you've got these people that they get all the government contracts, they produce awful results, and then other private or government sectors have to come in and basically do the job that we paid a private company to do. And that's just happening more and more. And I hope this is sort of a kick in the ass for some of the people out there that just entrusting this sort of public private partnership is not working because obviously the contracts go to chums,
obviously,
to select corporations and not who can actually provide the best service.
So Ben, you said in one of the interviews you did with us that you had somebody connected with Woolwich Barracks or something, and he said about these foreign troops coming in. I mean, apparently there's quite a lot of military presence over London. Do you think that's just related to because of G4S, or do you think they've been there all the time, a bit like your friend said?
Yeah, I think they've been here all the time. I mean, today it's been quite extraordinary that we've had a huge amount of military aircraft flying around London, helicopters, aeroplanes. I mean, you look out the window and it really is beginning to look like a war zone. And I'm not exaggerating. It was actually quite scary, some of it today has been.
It seems to me that there's probably going to be more security and military at the events than actual pedestrians.
Yeah, but apparently they said...
Because they're not selling any tickets,
they're not. No, my daughter actually won tickets for the women's football down at Cardiff today. So they're handing tickets out to schools to do in raffles. So she won that, bless her. But I don't know, I've lost my train of thought.
Yeah, for every 3 civilians, we'll have 12 military.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. Yeah, in the Commons when Theresa May was giving her speech, someone made the observation that there are actually going to be more troops here guarding the Olympics than what there are over in Afghanistan.
Well,
yeah, that's right. Yeah. And my contact, who basically said, look, there's all these foreign troops coming in, it could quite easily be the fact that they're running an exercise on top of the Olympics, very much like they did in 9/11. There was an exercise going on during 9/11, which is why they couldn't decide on the radar which was fake aeroplanes, which were real aeroplanes. That might be a possibility here as well.
Did you mention when I spoke to you earlier, Ben, that you said something about they're doing a training exercise at the moment today? Was that?
That's right. At Aldwych Tube Station, which is a disused tube station in London. I believe this is maybe the second or third time they've actually done this drill. but they've got a lot of the emergency services, and actually had a lot of military out as well today with a lot of the helicopters we saw, and they were doing an emergency drill. You saw people coming out with bandages around their head and fake blood, and it looked like something from a TV program. So that was going on today. So they're definitely rehearsing for things.
Blimey. So what's next for you? What's the plan? You've got the talk with Ian on 25th, isn't it, in Camden?
Yeah.
What else? What else have you got lined up?
Well, actually, things seem to be dropping away from me quite rapidly, I have to say, because of what I've done. So we'll have to see. I mean, there's a couple of projects that I wouldn't mind getting involved in. But I think, when you blow the whistle on things that clearly the government doesn't want you to do, there is a backlash. And unfortunately, I've had a few threatening phone calls today. I've been told that, I'll never sort of work in this town again type of stuff, right? So I think I'm experiencing the backlash now of what we've done here,
Well, unfortunately, Ben, that's like what we need is not only the whistleblowers, which is essential for keeping everything honest. You know, when something goes wrong, when wrongs are being done, people need to stand up and speak about it. But we need to have the public support for those people. We've always had, some sort of safeguard that if somebody comes to, expose ill deeds or whatever in government or in military or in private business, that the public support that person because he's doing benefit for the greater good. But it seems to be turned on its head. We've got people that are whistleblowers are getting hard time, while people that are destroying the economics of entire countries are being let off scot-free. Yeah. And there doesn't seem to be the public will. And I think a lot of it comes from just the fact that there's not enough public information out there. I mean, people know about you, Ben, in the truth movement, of course.
Yeah.
But that's the only place the story is being talked about.
Yeah.
You're not going to see it.
Well, 2 weeks later, they're picking it up. I mean, I don't know why. I was flicking through the radio channels, and Jeremy Vine was going on about it today. But I mean, Ben broke his story to Tony Gosling. What, 3 weeks ago now? I mean, you were on my show 2 weeks ago, weren't you?
Yeah, that's right.
So like, so this has been going, and then you went on the Columns show, and then back on this show as well.
But there needs to be a lot more public support for the whistleblowers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then there's going to be more whistleblowers, and then hopefully that's what we need is to get out of this mess. But
I mean, I think we've got an opportunity here, and what's been great for when I've done this is that because I did do this on Tony Gosling's show and your show and the column, and then went on to Alex Jones's show, and what is kind of great is that everyone for this one issue all was like a big network. And it all worked, and it was brilliant. And we've actually done something really good for the country here. So it doesn't really matter that I'm having I'm going to have a hard time and stuff like that. I knew that anyway. I always knew that. I didn't quite think the backlash would be threats on the phone. But we've done a really good thing here, and I think everyone needs to remember that it took all of us to do this, and we've all worked as a team, and we've all worked as a big network, and we've actually done something. We've actually changed how a huge, second biggest company in the world actually is operating at the Olympics. Yes, I know it's a big event, and I know it's a world event, but that opportunity was there, and everyone kind of helped to do it. So we've really done something good here, and whilst there might be a bit of negativity here and there, we should all be patting ourselves on the back, because you are the media, and you've done a great job at doing this, and that's what I'm pleased about. Ben,
I still haven't seen any comments come out of G4S yet. Because we called G4S, giving them the right to reply. They never came back to us, apart from that one gentleman who advised me not to go on air and talk about the Tony Gosling show. But I haven't seen anything come back.
No, and you won't either, because what's happening is that twice a day, Theresa May has been talking to the senior management of G4S, and they've been trying to, concoct their plan of what the responses are going to be. G4S don't feel that they need to say anything about what's going on and stuff like that. They're just going to release a statement. Boris Johnson said it's pre-games jitters. That's what's happened to G4S, which is ridiculous. It isn't. It's complete incompetence. But this is what's going to happen. What you're seeing is the future. Private companies running things in this country, and you know what? They're not accountable to anybody. And they tell the government what to do. They tell the media what to do. And that's how it's going to be. And we're the ones who are going to be left, in real trouble here. And I mean that. I'm not joking,
Well, it's because it's not even free market. Because even when in the free market, if you were going to have a capitalist system and a corporation or company performed badly, they would lose business.
Yeah.
We're not in that. It's all special handshakes, special relationships between these people, and basically going into government is an excuse to award contracts to your mates and get backhanders, and that's basically what we've ended up with.
Absolutely.
Which is corporatism, really. But I mean, that's the issue, and we need to start saying no, enough is enough. If we're going to be paying through the teeth for this stuff, then at least have some sort of,
Yeah.
But I'm hoping nothing happens. I'm hoping that there's enough light shed on this whole Olympics thing that they're not going to try anything dastardly, as it were. Because if they do, they're going to have some big kahunas, because there's a lot of information, unlike 9/11
it's gone out so much now.
Yeah, there's a lot of information that's gone out prior to the event that has shed enough light on a lot of this stuff that there's going to be eyes watching,
Yeah, absolutely.
So hopefully it'll just be a massive amount of public money stolen, which we're used to that anyways.
Exactly. Well, look, Ben, thank you for popping in with us tonight. We'll keep in touch during the week, and then, I don't know, maybe come on again next week. Oh, I'm not here next week. Well, we'll talk, we'll catch up during the week and do something pre-recorded. We've got Chris Everard coming on now. So, Ben, thanks a lot for spending your time with us, and keep safe.
Thank you ever so much, guys.
Hello, you're listening to Liberty Tactics on Critical Mass Radio, and we've got Chris Everard. Welcome, Chris.
Hello there.
How you doing?
I'm fine. I can hear you guys. You're a little bit quiet on the level, but it's okay.
Well, as long as you can hear us and we can hear you, that's the main thing.
That's fine. I can hear you nice and clearly now.
Oh, lovely.
Chris, just to start, do you want to give people a little bit? I mean, most people obviously know you from all your films, but just a little bit about your background and how you came to make your films. What inspired you to sort of get on this road?
Yeah. Well, my grandfather was a member of the Knights of Malta, which is it's a fairly high-level Masonic kind of organization. They're actually a country recognized by the United Nations. The Knights of Malta, excuse me, they have their own seat at the United Nations. It's a country with international treaties and diplomatic ties. The Knights of Malta actually issue their own passports, and their headquarters are in Rome. There's 3 countries in Rome. There's Italy, Vatican City, and the Knights of Malta. Right. And so from an early age, I was very interested because my grandfather was in the Royal Air Force, and there were lots of medals on the walls of our living room. Mm-hmm. Now, my mum always told me that they were medals from the Royal Air Force. But then when I got up on a ladder one day and I looked at them all, and there wasn't a single Royal Air Force medal. Right. They were all Knights of Malta sashes, medallions, medals, and all this kind of thing. So that sparked my interest. And then I remember I was going to work on my first job as a Saturday. I used to work in a hi-fi and video store on a Saturday morning. All right. When I was a kid. And I was going to work the first day on the top deck of a bus, and it turned a corner, and I saw a Masonic Lodge. It was the first time I'd ever seen one, and it had exactly the same symbols that I could see on my grandfather's medals. And it just fascinated me, and I thought, well, what is this? what is going on? So there was a hippie guy that used to fix people's TVs in the back room of this shop where I used to work. And I said to him, I said, what is this thing with the Freemasons and Masonry? What is it? A Masonic temple, and what do the Masons do? And this hippie guy just turned to me and he said, they control everything, man. Yeah, and that I suppose that's I can't really remember a time when I wasn't really interested in this type of thing, to be honest. It's something which has sort of been a constant thread. And I got Stephen Knight's book, The Brotherhood, which is a very old book, but it's still very good. And then the next book that made a big impact on me was called Freemasonry, It is a Religion, written by a former vicar who lived in Kent, not far from London. So I contacted that author. Can't remember his name now. His name's John something. It'll come to me in a little while. This is years and years ago, by the way. And so I continued researching, and I became friends with Jordan Maxwell, became friends with Anthony Hilder.
Yeah.
And I organised talks for Anthony in London. And we did lots of radio broadcasts, some legal, some illegal pirate stations, wherever we could go.
We've had Anthony on the show, actually, Chris.
Oh, okay. 2001, I was frustrated because there wasn't a proper documentary explaining what the global network of secret societies do and what they're like. And the other thing that was very annoying is that people's ideas of Freemasonry were very oversimplified. Excuse me. So I wanted to make a documentary that showed people that black magic, and I'm talking about the sacrifice of animals and people and children against their will, the torture of people against their will and trauma, was actually being practiced by certain cults. And a lot of the leaders of these cults were actually Freemasons. So I decided that the first person that I would choose as a subject for a documentary would be Aleister Crowley, who was employed by the Queen as a part-time spy with MI5. He was a member of the Royal Alpha Lodge, which convened at Kensington Palace, which is where Princess Diana was living at the time when she was assassinated. And Aleister Crowley had written a vast number of books himself, and he'd been hired as the boss of a German secret society called the Ordo Templi Orientis, though that was not the name that they went under when they first started. And they are, as far as my research shows, a splinter group from the Order of Strict Observance and from the original Bavarian Illuminati in the late 1700s. And Aleister Crowley was hired as a part-time kind of consultant, if you like, or spy. He was friends with Ian Fleming, who wrote the James Bond novels, and he was, employed by these Germans, Theodor Reuss, and another German chap who was a member of the German aristocratic nobility, to take over the Ordo Templi Orientis. Well, what Aleister Crowley did is he immediately rewrote a lot of the rituals, and the top degree in normal World International Freemasonry, Scottish Rite Masonry, is the 33rd degree. So what Aleister Crowley did is he took the 33rd degree, the top degree, and he made that the first degree in the Ordo Templi Orientis. And they have 10 degrees in total. The 11th degree gives you the right as an ipsissimus, a high, sort of magician, to actually control the OTO. And like all of these groups, it's splintered and it's fractured. And I've followed the history in my documentaries called The Illuminati. And basically, I'm now producing the 5th Illuminati film, which is quite amazing. It's a geopolitical documentary motion picture series. I've followed the Free Tibet campaign with the injustices that have been perpetrated against the Tibetan people in my films. I've had a thread going through my films about state-sanctioned mind control, especially amongst military and political figures. Mm-hmm. You can see footage of Bill Clinton clearly under some kind of hypnosis in my film Illuminati Volume 2, The Antichrist Conspiracy. Mm-hmm. And what I've tried to do is basically bring all of the most well-known authors together in this series of films. And it's still the only series of films that you can get that has Anthony Hilder, Jordan Maxwell, David Icke, Alex Jones, Nick Franks, John King, who wrote the book Diana, the Hidden Evidence, myself and several other researchers. Mm-hmm. And it was quite an effort to actually get these people to work together, because I did not know this at the time. I was kind of naive, but I've only just, come to the realization over the last, say, 3 or 4 years that there's huge egos with a lot of these people that are involved in the media. Mm. And, they saw me as just some, young guy coming along with his tripod and his camera. And I don't think any of those people realized the gravity of what I was doing. Yeah. And since then, more than 220 million people have seen my Illuminati films. And it's, now I'm on the fifth. The 5th film is called Illuminati Glitterati. Mm. It's about the occult in Hollywood. Mm. It's all backed up material. None of it's made up. There's memoirs, diaries, interviews, photos. I'm talking about blood cults in Hollywood. Many people have got a lot of, sort of doubts, if you like, about how the Hollywood system works. It always seems to be an in crowd. And my film exposes these blood cults, where they meet. It names the names. It shows you where they meet. And I've interviewed Hollywood people, and you can go to the Enigma channel and see a trailer movie for Illuminati 5, where Chad Buchanan, who's a Hollywood director and props master and producer, he's been working in the Hollywood game for about 20 years, actually says on camera that he was approached by one of these blood cults in a Los Angeles nightclub. And I researched it, and this is the kind of thing that I suppose makes my films pretty famous, because you don't see this type of information anywhere else.
Well, yeah, you're going into the Kabbalistic tree of life and
yes,
and all that in your Illuminati films. I think I've seen pretty much all of them, and the secret space films, and
yes,
they all do tie together. It's difficult when you're trying to wake people up, just how all-encompassing everything is. And I guess the trick of the matter is to not try and convey everything, because it is too much, and we only have snippets. But there definitely is something above the mundane conspiracy of a one world government, because we've already got the people that run the planet and have run the planet for many hundreds of years.
Yes,
they already have control of the planet.
Yeah.
It's not about having power. It's not about maintaining power. They're moving. It seems like they're moving on an occult path that they're trying to fulfill something. They're trying to achieve something.
Absolutely.
If
yes.
you just close your mind into logistics of do these factions want to control something or do something, it doesn't make necessary sense, because they've already had that power for a long time, and that's why people that are researching it, this sort of thing, deeply, they need to open themselves up to the fact that these guys are members of secret societies. They're deeply, deeply religious, or they're occultic. That they're tapping into something on a supernatural level. And then, unless you sort of start researching that, you're never going to understand why they do what they do. And that's why I think it's great that you your films sort of dive into that when a lot of people, they end at eugenics, or they end at the logistics of the one world government, but not actually the reasons why, what drives these people to carry out this sort of thing,
Yeah, well, I've made a film called Superstate, which is a film about who really controls planet Earth. And, as I've got deeper and deeper into exposing the history of the royal political elite, let's say what it is, the world is actually fiscally, economically controlled by a royal political elite. And it's centered at Buckingham Palace. And the Saxe-Coburg-Gotha dynasty, which is the real name of the Windsors, Windsor is not their real name, has been in place since the time of Queen Victoria when she married Prince Albert Coburg. And we have now more than 100 years of this family in power. And Prince Philip, who is the husband of Queen Elizabeth, his name is Schleswig-Holstein-Glücksburg-Sondersburg. And he is not German. He's not Greek, which is what a lot of people think he is. He's a German-Danish person from German-Danish heritage. And these people have very questionable political empathies. And this is only just beginning to come out, he's in his 90s now. It's taken many years for me and other researchers to actually find out exactly who his family are. I'll give you an example, is that everybody loved the mother of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mum. God bless the Queen Mum.
Yeah.
Everybody loved her, and then on her birthday, everybody used to go to Clarence's house and wave at her. Well, where's his mother? Who is she? What's her name? Where does she live? Is she German? Is she English? Where is she? This is a Mr. Nobody. And the thing is that these people have the BBC. By the way, the Director General of the BBC is personally appointed by the Queen or the King, whoever is the monarch at the time. And we have this amazing media mind control velvet roller coaster working on behalf of this royal political elite. Now, there are many people in that royal family who have been sort of shuffled away. The last person was Princess Alice, who was buried in the grounds of a mental institution. Now, the three sisters of Prince Philip married senior Nazis. And, we really do need to have a public debate about this type of thing. Only 67 years ago, they were breeding a master race of blonde-haired, blue-eyed people who were actually going to be sacrificial victims. They weren't going to be the leaders, because none of the leaders had blonde hair or blue eyes. The whole idea of breeding this master race was to breed sacrificial victims and bring back a death's head cult, which was based on blood sacrifice, which is exactly what the SS was all about. And the best friend of the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, was Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands. And he was a member of the SS. And he wore a crisp, jet black uniform. And he was stationed in Paris working for IG Farben, who were manufacturing the Zyklon B crystals that were used to gas people. Now, this was 67 years ago.
Yeah.
And they crushed the ancient nations of Europe. They bombed and turned into bomb sites many of our ancient capitals. Why? They did it to create what we have today, which is a cardboard cutout version of reality in Europe, where everybody is being pushed into a homogenized EU superstate. And the ancient cultures and the ancient nations of Europe are being crushed. There are many countries in Europe which are unrecognized, such as Catalonia. The capital of Catalonia is Barcelona. They have their own flag, their own language, and yet they're suppressed. The The same thing could be said about Cornwall. The Cornish people have their own language, they have their own flag. They're also suppressed. Uh-huh. Now, the thing is that this EU superstate is being controlled from behind the scenes by the royal political elite, the British Bavarian royal sovereign houses. And this is their master plan. And it is being controlled through a series of instructions and scripts, if you like, which are handed out to members of the media once a year at secret meetings, which we know as the Bilderberg meetings. And the Bilderberg group, the very first meeting happened at the Bilderberg Hotel in Amsterdam. And who was presiding over that first meeting? It was Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, the former SS officer.
And we've got this sort of mind control over the British public, when you can have Philip saying all these sorts of racist things, or, you know, saying that he'd like to come back as a virus and wipe out people, and people brush it off as some sort of, you know, nicey nice, oh, he's just an eccentric old man. But we've got very real ties. You know, Edward abdicated the throne because, you know, he fell in love with an American, which, you know, very nice sort of fairy tale there, but, you know, he was a major Nazi sympathizer, and I think that was pretty much the reason why they couldn't sort of, you know, publicly let that out. We've got this sort of this blind side when our royalty, you know, are basically Nazi Illuminati scumbags. We just sort of say, oh well, you know, make up some nice excuses for it, but, you know, we'll go chase after some 95-year-old bloke living in the States who was a prison guard at Auschwitz, and you know, throw him to the wolves. But the guys that actually had some sort of power influence, the corporations like IBM, which were responsible for, you know, making the machines that catalogued and branded the people in the death camps, that's completely fine. They can go ahead, you know, business as usual.
Well, the businesses that we see, the big brands. By the way, if you look at the spinning globe on your radio station website, criticalmassradio.co.uk,
yeah,
we've got people from Lima, Peru, New South Wales in Australia, Erbil, which I think is Iraq, Manchester in England. You know, the thing is that people want the truth. And I help in running a page called Exposing the Truth on Facebook, which today celebrated 250,000 members.
Right.
That's more than twice the capacity of Wembley Stadium. 250,000 people. It will probably go into millions if it's not shut down. And the thing is that this information is something which there is such a hunger for this information, because the media dance to the tune of the corporate advertisers. And
people are aware, despite all of the attempts to dumb down the population, to make them into you know, mindless automatons that don't have any sort of critical thought. There's still a lot of people that are, you know, asking the questions. They know that they're getting messed around with. We just had Ben Fellows on, which was working for G4S Security as a whistleblower, and he sort of exposed that, you know, that it was a giant shams. And then, you know, weeks before the Olympic Games start, you know, they had to come out and say, well, we need another, you know, 3,000 or 4,000 troops to handle, to take care of, you know, G4S's job, just because they weren't able to get the logistics of enough, you know, personnel. People know that they're being fed, you know, corporate lines, and that the news is just sort of spewing out a press release, and that's it. And the mainstream media doesn't seem to get that people are past that. You know, the days of them just shoveling off some PR campaign, press release, are over. I think the people that are awake or are inquisitive, they need to know. They want to know.
I mean, I want to know more, Chris, just to pick your brains about the whole Lady Di thing. I mean, we never saw the over here. I don't know anybody who's got. Is it Keith Allen? Was it?
Yes.
Unlawful Killing. I don't know anybody who's actually seen that film. I know it was released over in Ireland, and there's a YouTube clip of people coming out of the cinema talking about it, but I don't know anybody who's seen it. Have you?
No, I haven't seen it. I am in touch with the PR people, and I own the Enigma channel, so we've said to Keith and the entire production team, we give them as much help as possible. I mean, this Diana, the assassination of Diana is an ongoing situation, and there's many people writing books and making films about it. I made a 4-hour film in 2007 called Lady Di, and Keith was funded by the father of Dodi Al-Fayed, Mr. Muhammad Al-Fayed, and you're absolutely right. People believe that everything is on YouTube. It's not. YouTube is not a community. It's a corporation, and it's owned by Google Incorporated, and their European headquarters is in Buckingham Palace Road. YouTube has an official royal channel, and they are a publicly quoted stock exchange NASDAQ company. Now, the stock market system works like this. These people, like Mark Zuckerberg or any of the people that float a company onto the stock market system, after that day, after that bell is rung and those stocks and shares are made available for sale, they become mere figureheads. They do not actually understand or know who has bought those shares. And the royal political elite use front companies such as Bank of England Nominees Limited to buy shares in huge companies. And my series of documentaries called The Illuminati has investigated as best as I can, as best as my team can do, to find out what is inside the investment portfolio of the Crown Estates and the private investment portfolios of members of the royal family. What we found so far is that they invest in absolutely everything. The Queen invested in a punk rock record label. She's one of the most high-profile investors in Rio Tinto Zinc, which is involved in the uranium mining business, which supplies uranium to nuclear power plants. Crown Estates own 55% of all of the beaches and foreshore in the United Kingdom, and that's where we find these nuclear power stations, like Dungeness and Dounreay in Scotland, which is a failed pressure water reactor experiment, which has poisoned the whole of Dounreay. In actual fact, there are signs on the beaches at Dounreay saying that radioactive particles have been found on the beach. Why? Because it exploded. Hey, we don't know about it.
I don't hear about it now.
Why? Because the Director General of the BBC is appointed by Her Majesty, and they all want their OBEs. Now, last year, I must say this, last year at Oldbury, near Bristol, and Bristol is only 2 hours from London, and it's 2 hours from Birmingham, millions of people live in that area. The Oldbury Magnox reactor, which is a twin reactor using MOX fuel, caught fire, and a plume of black smoke and steam, which was probably radioactive steam, went into the upper atmosphere. And it was not reported on the news. It wasn't reported on the national news, international news, or local news.
And we've got a situation here where you can't, watch the telly or read the newspaper or go outside without reading about how dangerous your carbon footprint is. The very act of you being alive is killing the planet. But for some reason, when Fukushima explodes and it's bellowing out radiation, we're told that, as long as you live 13 miles outside of the explosion, it's completely safe, completely harmless, nothing to worry about, move along, sir. I mean, it drives me mental. So they own that. I would guess that they've also got their fingers in the military, especially if they've got so many nuclear facilities, depleted uranium, which is being used in all our troops. You're told to support the troops, but when you say, look, our troops are using depleted uranium, which is killing them, it's defects, birth defects, cancers are up,
they've turned Iraq into a toxic wasteland, and that is to deter any other country or national state or any other faction from going in there and trying to negotiate for the oil.
But then we've got Blair and Bush walking around scot-free. this is what makes me utterly sick. We've interviewed Dr. David Halpin, who wanted to reopen the Dr. David Kelly inquest. Obviously, it didn't happen. But we've still got Bush and Blair wandering around scot-free after entering into this illegal war and not being called into The Hague.
Well, it was not a war, it was an invasion.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, invasion.
It was a military invasion, and they have diplomatic and political immunity because they are political representatives. And you'll find that it's impossible to actually drag any member of the House of Commons or the House of Lords into prison. Only just recently there was a expenses fraud, and I think 3 or 4, maybe 5 members of Parliament served very short prison terms, just a few months mostly, and that's the first time I've ever seen any of those members of Parliament actually being put into prison. That had to be done using the highest judicial methods. A member of the public cannot bring a case against somebody like Blair or Bush. These people are finger puppets, and they come from families which are, if you like, bred from birth to actually fulfill their duties. I mean, let's face it, Tony Blair, nowhere. You know, nobody knew who this guy was. The Bush family has been an intergenerational Luciferian occultic family for more than 100 years. Prescott Bush was a member of the Skull and Bones Brotherhood of War with its headquarters at the campus of Yale University. And there they have rituals where they lay naked in coffins, and somebody dressed up as the Pope, another person dressed up as Don Quixote, and another person dressed up as the devil rests his foot on the skull, the real skull, the human skull of Indian Chief Geronimo, and questions them about their sexual history and their lives.
But it's all in completely sane, good mannered fun, and it's not suspicious at all.
Well, it creates a bonding, and this is what it's all about. These black magic cults like the Corazon Club, the Palladian Rite, these are cults which you can only find about by watching my films. You don't see them in any other documentaries. Freemasonry, all of its different flavors of Freemasonry, Scottish Rite, York Rite. These are the glue, if you like, that glue together the old boy network into a loyal, cohesive movement that will never, ever breathe a word that, you know, the biggest investors in the military cartels and now the supermarket cartels are the royal political elite.
Well, I think that's one of the problems you have with, you know, if you mention Freemasonry, people look at you like you're some sort of nut job because they usually know they have an uncle or a brother or somebody that's a Freemason, and he's a good chap, you know, nice bloke, doesn't do anything wrong, he's not evil, and that's, you know, people then say, well, obviously it's all a load of tosh. Well, it's not, because like all of these secret societies, the people on the lowest levels don't know anything. You know, they turn up, they have a little boys club, you know, they don't have any access to the hidden knowledges levels above them, but they are complicit because they go along with, you know, the doctrine. So
those people, to be honest, they do not know. The people that join the local Masonic lodges, you know, in the side streets of the local high streets, and the people that join the Masonic lodges in, you know, rural areas of America, they are joining, you know, just a kind of social fraternity. Yeah. But the difference is so massive between that low-level masonry and then the Corazon Club or the Ordo Templi Orientis, where, you know, they have the Book of the Law written by Aleister Crowley on the lectern as their holy work. And, you know, Aleister Crowley recommended that the ideal sacrificial victim was a 9-year-old boy of above average intelligence. And then beyond the Corazon Club, which is basically an anal sex ritual kind of fraternity. Beyond there, we then go into the Palladian Rite, which is men and women. And there are even sicker and more terrible kind of black magic versions of Luciferian or Illuminized Freemasonry beyond there. And there was a high-level satanic Mason who died recently in Australia, and he made a deathbed confession. His name is Peter Narsagonan. Mm-hmm. And they were kicking babies to death, in their temples. So, the people that join Freemasonry at that low level in the rural towns, most of the time they're joining it for social reasons and to be able to meet the local bank manager, and, meet the local teacher, meet the local boss of the university so that they can get their kid into the local college, and it goes no further than that.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, if you look at, I think the Phoenicians were renowned for, they would sacrifice their own children, their own firstborn children, and the Phoenicians, of course, are one of the proto groups that grew into this various secret societies. It's fundamental, this child sacrifice, the killing of children.
Well, it comes down to
their belief system.
Yeah, it comes down to blood, and the life force obviously runs through the blood. I mean, there is no organ inside the human body that's responsible for the life force. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can have a professional coroner and a professional pathologist, and they can dissect an entire human body, and every organ that they find has got a designated task, and there isn't a single organ there that's responsible for the life force that animates us. It's like you can, dissect a body into as many parts as you want, and the life will slip through your fingers. Mm-hmm. The life force is contained in the blood. Mm-hmm. And, this is what psychics are. I've made several films called Spirit World, several motion picture documentaries discussing ectoplasm and how psychic people actually manipulate their own ectoplasm, which is this own vibrant force within their blood. And, this energy, it's called many different things in lots of different cultures, prana, chi, kundalini, whatever, but it actually circulates through the body as oxygenated red blood cells. Mm-hmm. And this is the animating force. And so when you sacrifice on an altar, say a small animal, which is what was happening in the ancient Judaic Hebrew world, where the streets of ancient Palestine or ancient Israel were running in blood. I mean, people weren't actually slicing the animals' throats themselves personally. They would pay the rabbis to do it for them. And we can see that, in South America, there was human sacrifice. And I run expeditions to Egypt. And many people think the pharaohs were not involved in human sacrifice. And I can tell you that they were. Mm-hmm. And I went to the temple of Komombo. Komombo is a crocodile deity. And I found, with my group on the last expedition to Egypt, evidence there of sacrificial altars with channels cut into the rock where the blood could run away. And the ancient Egyptians used to take prisoners from surrounding countries. They used to invade surrounding countries, and they used to behead those prisoners in sacrificial ways, much the same as you see depicted in Mel Gibson's film Apocalypto, which is based in South America, and takes its cues from the Aztec and from the Mayan, but mostly the Aztec cultures in South America, which were also involved in blood worship. And the ectoplasm is released, and the whole aim of what these rituals are meant to do is to allow the magician to absorb that life energy, or to offer that life energy to some spirit, some spiritual entity. And I know this sounds absolutely fantastical, and I know it sounds incredible, but you should read the confessions of Peter Narsagonan, who was a high-ranking Satanist who died recently, and he was operating in Sydney in Australia. And I've said these things many times on broadcasts, but I have to repeat some of this information because, quite frankly, it's the kind of thing that you don't see on the History Channel.
Well, no. I mean, you were talking, your latest film is focusing on Hollywood, so I would presume that you're going to be going into the Scientology cult, which is, of course, based on L. Ron Hubbard's time with Aleister Crowley, and which is basically the Black Bible, Satanism.
And there's been so much talk this week about
because
Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes, and this week that's all there's been over here in the British press. That's the most important thing that's going on in the world at the moment. Katie Holmes is divorcing Tom Cruise, but I mean...
Yeah, but I mean, of course...
She buys my films, by the way.
Does she really?
Yeah, and Will Smith as well, yeah.
Oh, good.
Wow.
But obviously, those who have delved even, remotely into Scientology, it's Satanism.
L. Ron, let's just sort of say to the listeners, because obviously, we know about this kind of thing, but for a listener, it can be mind-blowing. L. Ron Hubbard has fashioned himself, before he died, as a science fiction writer. But he was a disciple of Aleister Crowley, and he was a correspondent with Aleister Crowley, and he was friends with an American chap who was actually the head of the American Ordo Templi Orientis. And this chap actually worked at Jet Propulsion Labs and actually developed solid fuel rocket boosters for JPL, which were then used by NASA. And his name is Jack Parsons, and he was the boss of the American Ordo Templi Orientis. And Jack Parsons was a rocket scientist. And he was friends with L. Ron Hubbard, and they did rituals together. And one of the rituals is described in my film, The Antichrist Conspiracy, which is Illuminati Volume 2. By the way, you can get all my films on Amazon, the British Amazon, amazon.co.uk. You just type in my name, Chris Everard, and you can see a list of my films.
Yeah, I'll post the links up there. I'll post the links over in a bit.
Okay, and they did a ritual which really basically gave the soul of Jack Parsons to whatever entities you can describe into this area called the Abyss. And the Abyss is this grey area that exists between the physical plane and the spiritual world. And he really wanted to become a member of what you call the Black Brotherhood. And he rechristened himself Dajjal, which is the name of the Antichrist or Satan in the Islamic world, or the Arabic language, Dajjal. Armilas, which is the Antichrist in the Hebrew tradition, and he really believed it. And he put all of his efforts into building a super bomb for the Israeli government. He actually blew himself to pieces while he was actually researching how to build this devastating bomb that would even be more devastating than the atom bomb. And he was friends with L. Ron Hubbard. Well, like most of these cultish people, they had an argument, they fell out with each other. L. Ron Hubbard ran off with his girlfriend, I think, or something like that. And both these people were disciples of Aleister Crowley, along with Kenneth Anger, who is an American filmmaker who employed the young Jimmy Page, the guitarist from Led Zeppelin, to record the soundtrack for his films Lucifer Rising. And the other one is called The Pleasure Dome. I can't remember the full title right now, but you can look up these films. Kenneth Anger, you can do a web search for him and you can look up his biography. These people have influenced mainstream, normal, apple pie TV culture. L. Ron Hubbard was friends with the producers of Star Trek. L. Ron Hubbard was actually employed as a consultant on Star Trek. Many of the kind of script plot lines that you see in Star Trek were actually discussed between Gene Roddenberry and L. Ron Hubbard.
They do sort of blend into that. I mean, we've been researching the Saturn cult.
Yes.
And that is completely throughout the Star Trek The original series.
The Saturn cult are very powerful in Hollywood. They have been for a long time. They produced a silent movie, which I mentioned to Lou off air just yesterday, I think it was.
That's right.
They produced a film which is a silent black and white film, but it's still terrifying. Don't watch it in the dark on your own. Mm-hmm. It's called Nosferatu. Mm-hmm. And have you ever seen Nosferatu?
Yes, the original. Yeah. Now,
for a film made in, I think it was 1924 or 1929, it's absolutely horrific.
Yeah, definitely.
There is a scene in there where there is a letter from Nosferatu, from the Count, and they are using real sigils, real symbols from medieval grimoire books of black magic in that film. Everything that you see in that film is based on what the Order of Saturn really believe in. Mm-hmm. And, my new film, Illuminati 5, it looks into the Order of Saturn in Hollywood, L. Ron Hubbard, and also Lady Gaga. Mm-hmm. Lady Gaga is, if you like, promoting a kind of blood fetish. And her new perfume is called Monster, and it contains her blood and the semen of Marilyn Manson.
So we have these priestesses, these high priestesses in these cults. Lady Gaga is obviously one of the main ones right now, because all she ever does is basically push that agenda, that line, and eventually she'll probably get sacrificed to it.
Well, there's
just odd.
Well, I think she's a dolly or whatever they want to call her, but she's obviously
messed up.
Every single thing that she does. I mean, she came out of an egg like Ishtar. I mean, it's just you don't even. I mean, as a researcher, you don't even have to bother researching with people like Lady Gaga, because it's so in your face that the sort of agenda that they're pushing, the ritualistic nature of it.
But then you see it on kids of the. I mean, thank God my little one doesn't like her. But I mean, you see it on kids of like 8 and 9.
But that's why they do it.
Thing up on the bedroom wall. I mean,
these young kids will be spraying themselves with the Monster perfume, which has homeopathic diluted concentrations of Marilyn Manson's semen and Lady Gaga's blood.
So I guess they've got Marilyn Manson tied up to some sort of milking device. But regardless, it's not nothing. Yeah.
Well, we're dealing with homeopathic style dilutions, so over say 1 million bottles, there's a tiny drop. But how does homeopathy work? It works through the power of dilution.
Yeah, and the memory that the substance
it's the molecular memory, and we're dealing with Lady Gaga. Promoting this perfume that contains her blood, and it's obviously going to be bought by millions of little girls who are going to go home and they're going to undress, they're going to spray themselves with this stuff, and this is the kind of thing that these Luciferian cults get a big kick out of.
Oh yeah, they love it.
They love this kind of thing. And what I said earlier, Kenneth Anger, L. Ron Hubbard, these people have really made the 20th century their own. And there is a great film, actually, called The Devil's Advocate with Keanu Reeves and Al Pacino. It's a great film. And Al Pacino plays the devil. And there's a line in that film, and it's absolutely correct. He says, no one can deny that the 20th century has not been the century of the devil, of all this death, war, destruction, and now major worldwide pollution. Mm-hmm. And I've made this film called Superstate, which is basically banned on all of these video sharing websites. I mean, there's videos of me giving, I give lots of talks all around the world. There's one of me giving a talk in a pub in Kent. It's very noisy. And it's labelled Superstate, but that's not my film. My film, Superstate, is a full-on 2-hour motion picture documentary. It's been filmed all over the world. And in that film, I show that there is an agenda to poison the sky, poison the soil, and poison the sea. Yeah. And this agenda, it's coming really from pacts which are made at altars in these Masonic temples, in the temples of the Corazon Club, in the temples of the Ordo Templi Orientis, in the temples of the the Palladian Rite, all over the world. And you have to be very, very careful when you start summoning spiritual forces. Anybody that's experimented with the Ouija board will tell you, yes, that there is something on the other side. And there are many of these weird entities that come forward, and it's like the classic story of Dr. Faust, and Dr. Faust was a real person, and they do these pacts, and very often it's the same old pact. You have this, first of all, extremely helpful and fascinating and familiar kind of spirit coming through, who then gradually, over a series of seances, becomes more and more and more demanding and more persuasive. And in the end, you get a situation, which is what I've investigated for my films called Spirit World, where you don't need a Ouija board anymore. You don't need the magic circle anymore. You don't need the altar. You don't need any magical paraphernalia. The thing will not go away. And there are many people that have been involved in these covens and cults that bring forth these spiritual entities who are psychologically very damaged from their experiences. These things have either got into them permanently, or they've left remnants of their personality which graze and rub up against the actual original personality of the person, and that's created medically diagnosed schizophrenia. And these pacts usually, in the first instance, they usually demand self-harm, where the person is led along a path where it ends up that they're scarring their entire body. And then it goes into killing small animals, and then it'll go into actual full human sacrifice. And my film, Superstate, really shows who is controlling, who the royal political elite are, and what are the secret societies and cults and covens that they are members of. And there are lots of them. We have the Order of the Snake. We have the Swedish.
He warned us. This happens quite a lot with Chris, apparently. Welcome back,
Hello
Chris.
there.
Yeah, Chris,
Hello
we've only
there.
got a couple of minutes.
Okay, well, if we only got 2 minutes, I'd just like to say I've enjoyed doing the show.
Well, I was going to say we'd love to have you back on to go into this a little bit more. Your new books, your book and all your DVDs are all on Amazon, yeah?
Amazon, British Amazon,
okay.
Amazon.co.uk. My new book is called Stone Age Psychedelia, and it's selling about 24 copies every minute, and nobody's more surprised than I am. And it's a book about the plants that have been used since the prehistory that give people telepathic contact with their ancestor spirits, and it describes all the different plants and herbs and mushrooms that have been used throughout the history that are really the inspiration to all the biblical visions, and it's called Stone Age Psychedelia, and you can get it on Amazon.co.uk.
Well, Chris, I've got so many more questions, so we're going to have to get you back.
Would you come back on again with us?
I can do. But the thing is that, I make these types of films and I write those types of books, and obviously the intelligence services aren't very happy with me. Neither are NASA. So it just goes with the territory, that kind of thing,
Well, Chris, it's
we'll
really
speak to you
brilliant.
again soon.
It's fascinating.
And good luck with
the book,
I'm
the
sure
films, and everything, the hard work you're doing.
Thanks very much, chaps, and I'll come on again if you send me a message.
Will do. Thanks a lot, Chris. Have a good night.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Awesome. Right,
really good,
we've got the boxing vicar coming up.
He's coming up. Can I just say happy birthday to my little boy?
Happy birthday, Jack.
Yeah, happy birthday, Jack. 7.
Oh,
that's my little
you're brooding.
shout-out.
You ready? You're brooding,
he's growing up.
Oh, it's lovely. Anyways, we've got an action-packed show next week. It's just incredible. I'm speechless.
It's been,
No, seriously. I mean, we're getting some kick-ass interviews on.
We are.
And we're
really
delving
good,
into some. We're delving into a lot of topics that don't get nearly enough sort of
thanks
impact.
Paul for having us on. It's great.
So we'll get you next week on Liberty Tactics. Lou is away, so we'll either pre-record.
Can I just actually give a little plug for that?
Go for it.
Next weekend in Dunstable, go to the UK Column website. It's Strike a Chord. There's music. Ian Crane's talking. Tony Farrell. Who else is talking? Thomas Sheridan talking about psychopaths. And Brian as well is talking, so it should be quite a good all-day event.
Awesome, and so I can't even leave you off with any music, but we hope you have a great week, and we'll catch you next week on Liberty Tactics Radio.
Bye.
Take it easy, guys. Bye-bye.
Come about like this. Allegiance to the Lord of your manor was achieved like this. At the age of 12, a boy would be taken to the manor court where the Lord was sitting, and he'd be expected to swear fealty to that Lord. And then there was a chain of hierarchy. So the Lord swore loyalty to the Earl, and the Earl swore allegiance to the King. So there was a food chain. The thing was, this was a contract, because what the individual did, he swore allegiance in return for protection and justice. If the protection and justice wasn't offered, in other words, if the law broke the contract, the person, the boy, not now the man, could withdraw his allegiance and basically have to tell the king about it. Now, there's some dispute about how long it takes. Some authorities say a year, and some say only 40 days. In case of Magna Carta, that's where the 40 days came from in relation to warning the king to sort himself out. So if you search Diffidatio, you'll find many references to it, and the most important one, in actual fact, I think, is Blackstone's Commentaries on the Laws of England, which is the authoritative textbook that courts still quote today. So I've written a couple of articles about it, and I'll put links in shortly. And the idea is that Roger as an individual was rebelling. Now, if you'd spoken to me 10 years ago, I would have said, well, no, you can't do that. And the reason I would have said that is, if you look in legal textbooks, they'll refer you to a case called Casement. Right. And Casement is he's an Irishman. It's the First World War. For whatever reason, he joins the British Army. He gets captured by the Germans. They interview all their prisoners, and they discover he's what we now call an IRA man, or a Republican. So they say to him, well, you don't really like the British, do you? Tell you what, we've got other Irishmen in our camp here that agree the same thing. How about we form you into an army unit to go and fight the Brits? So he went along with it for a bit, but unfortunately the Germans lose the war and he gets captured and he gets found out. So he's charged with treason. And he argued that... he argued duress to circumstances. He said, well, the Germans threatened me if I didn't do this. And that was my excuse. Now, that's the defence of duress to circumstances. Duress is the concept of you can commit a minor crime in order to prevent worse things happening. And it goes all the way from a policeman driving his car through a red traffic light on his way to an emergency call. He does the deed, he drives through the red traffic light, but he's saving lives, so he hasn't got any intent to break the law there. Through to self-defence. If somebody's bearing down on you with a big club saying he's going to hit you, you can defend yourself against him. And there are three things in actual fact you can defend. You can defend your life, you can defend your property, and you can defend your liberty. And liberty is something that the invader will take.
I haven't had a chance to have a look at anything at either. It's been a bit of a hectic day.
Right, I'll have a quick look, see whether he sent it, because Roger's not a boss, because we're a narco-syndicalist collective. No, actually, we work on the cell system, so nobody can pick us off.
Yeah, so who's behind it? I mean, there's yourself, there's Danny Bamping,
yeah.
Chris Jarvis as well is all doing an awful lot. Yvonne Stewart-Taylor, and who else is up there?
Well, there's too many to mention. A lot of them are pseudonyms on Skype, so some of them I know to talk to, but I wouldn't recognise them if I bumped into the street.
Right, I see.
But the bottom line is this: bearing in mind that nobody knows everything. Chris Jarvis has got a claim to fame. He's the only person who successfully, only private individual who successfully has got a habeas corpus upheld. Habeas corpus means reduce the body, and you go to the High Court and they tell the judge, what's gone wrong, why this person shouldn't be locked up. And the judge agrees, and they let go. Look, that was Norman Scarf. Rusty and Malcolm Massey weren't successful. The reason is, that in terms of the other side, they were lawfully locked up because they'd been to court convicted. There was a warrant, but Norman was in his position. So Chris is a centre of excellence, shall we say? And one of the important things that he did is because it went to the High Court, the Queen's Bench Division, it set a precedent for the lower court. And Malcolm and Chris, there's an echo. Is that you or me?
It might be us.
Okay, just mute your microphone and I'll rub it on for a bit. Chris Jarvis set the precedent that the Mackenzie friend gets to speak. Because traditionally, a Mackenzie friend in court helps prepare the case, knows about it, but lawyers hold on to their right of audience, it's called, don't they? Yeah. And the last thing they want is private individuals speaking up because it'll put them out of a job. So Chris Jarvis established the precedent that Mackenzie friends can speak. So that's a very useful step forward.
Definitely.
And fair play. So the state of play with Roger is Roger's been a lawful rebel for years.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen my video on Prana at the roadside. Occupy auto lifts. Have you seen that one?
No, I don't think I have, John. No.
Okay. Well, cut a long story short. I went into one and gave a little speech because we called in there on the way back from Liverpool. Yeah. And it goes like this: our ancestors weren't stupid. They knew that kings would from time to time be oppressive. They probably didn't know what a psychopath was, but they know what one looked like. So they took precautions. And the important thing is, this is an ancient common law remedy. It's called diffidatio. What that is, it's the right to defiance. And
dictatorships and fascist states on the planet and throughout history have been ones with no right to bear arms. So I think it's kind of funny how they act when. Yeah. I mean, definitely. I think everybody has the right. We're seeing it a lot, and that's one of the things. I'm all about the right to bear arms, because just the practicality of it. You've got England, which is completely disarmed, and we're a nation of victims. And anybody that does stand up for their rights, they get thrown in jail. Yeah.
Well, there's a man called Bapty that has been manufacturing guns. He's an engineer as well. A man called Bapty and his son. If you do a web search for them, and basically every time they manufacture one to through the point, they get locked up. Right. And he's a little known hero, the Baptys. So there we are. Just get a little story. It's 10 years ago, and the Metropolitan Police form a violent crime reduction policy initiative, and they set up an office staffed by Chief Inspector and various other people. And I ring them up and say, well, what about the right to bear arms? Now, I was talking to a young female detective constable, and there was a shocked silence. What? Hope people defending themselves. So she turned and spoke to somebody else in the room, and a hubbub developed. And you hear people saying, what, no, not having that. And eventually the Chief Inspector was called to the phone, and he said, that's not the sort of thing we were actually looking for. Bye. So that's how the police approached the right to bear arms. Mm-hmm. Post 1969. You're quite right. The 60s were an interesting time. A lot of subversion went on, of course, in the run up to joining the EU. So that was the hidden agenda.
Yeah.
So okay, so now you work.
Well, I don't work because I don't get paid for it. Put it that way.
Yeah.
When I was a policeman, I was a Mackenzie friend. So a Mackenzie friend is elected. I did two postings of 3 years, and then I retired because I had other commitments. And slightly unusual in the police because you're depending rather than prosecuting. So if a policeman was accused of something, I would assist him as a Mackenzie friend, and I've acted to assist the defence in courts, from magistrates to coroners to Crown Court and so on, and the Old Bailey as well. Mm-hmm. So it's not many policemen actually go down the defending as well as the prosecuting route. So it's a little bit unusual. And when you retire, there's a few short resettlement courses, and they say, well, do a CV, because nobody likes doing a CV, do they? Don't like talking about themselves. They force you to do a CV, and then you pick out skills that you've got that might be usable outside. So the rest is history. There we go.
Okay, so what is the latest with Roger, John?
Well, the state of play. Now, bear in mind, I've been out this afternoon. I haven't seen the press release that Brian was going to put out.
No, actually, I haven't.
Hello, you're listening to the Liberty Tactics show over on Critical Mass Radio with James and Lou. It's July 13th, and this week we'll be getting an update on Roger Hayes. We'll be talking to Olympic whistleblower Ben Fellows, and we have writer, director and producer Chris Everard on as well to talk about a whole host of issues and about the Secret Society Network. So stay tuned.
Hi John Hurst, how you doing?
Sorry about the delay, but there was flooding in Hereford, and the skies opened on the way back.
You're not insinuating that there's been a lot of rain, because that would be a whacked out conspiracy theory.
Well, we've been visiting Bodmin Manor, as you probably know, and with Lana and Paddy, their crops aren't growing satisfactorily. I mean, a lot of people are saying that. It's going to be a problem, isn't it?
Super. So, John, you've been sort of representing Roger. Can you? First...
Well, amongst others, it's a group effort.
Yeah.
We all bring our different life experiences, don't we? So nobody knows everything.
Yeah. Can you give everybody, like the listeners who aren't aware of you, a little bit of an insight into what you do, John, please?
Well, I came over from the dark side, I'm afraid. I was a policeman for 30 years. I managed to survive long enough to get my pension.
Yeah. Not
the physical sense, but I woke up about 12, 15 years ago. So what did it for me was the right to bear arms. On a daily basis, people were assaulted by criminals, and in earlier times, they were basically shot or stabbed with a sword or some other pointy thing. The public in England and in Britain have been conned to think that we're somehow strangely pacifists, and we never actually used to defend ourselves against criminals. And it's absolute nonsense. Up until 1969, you could get a firearms certificate for a gun for self-defence, pistol or whatever, with no trouble at all. Shotguns were sold like air guns until 1968. Every country post office would have one behind the counter. So, strangely enough, armed robberies on country post offices didn't happen very often. A postman used to carry guns to defend posts, that sort of thing. It's completely hidden history that nobody knows about. 1969. The Home Secretary of the day issued a policy, it was secret for 20 years, a policy instruction to chief constables to stop issuing firearms certificates for self-defence. So a lot of people suddenly said, well, I'm really interested in target shooting or hunting, carried on. But the right to bear arms is still there, it's just hidden.
Yeah. And as we know, the greatest...
Anyway, if the Germans had won in 1940, for example, hopefully I wouldn't be here, because my father was a policeman, and he would have put up a fight. But the rest of you will be speaking in German, as they say.
Yeah.
So let's go back to Casement. So Casement gets arrested by the British and charged with treason, and he argues, well, they made me do it. Well, that established that the defence of duress doesn't cover treason. It does cover anything less than treason, but not treason and murder. So eventually, Casement was hung. Well, I later found what really happened. So the judgment that was relied on in the textbook says the duty of allegiance is indefeasible and perpetual. Indefeasible and perpetual. I later found that Casement was more or less a political prisoner, and he was quickly executed before he could appeal. So he didn't get his day in court properly, did he? Now, this diffidatio concept shows that whatever judge was sitting in 1919 was clearly wrong, wasn't he? Because our common law right is to withdraw your allegiance, and that's in the textbooks. That's the precedent. So I now know that the free men are right.
Right.
But they have to go through the formalities, and they have to do it publicly, and they have to give the Queen 40 days. And a lot of them have done that, of course, haven't they?
No.
Yeah.
You know when he went up in court. You know when he was in court, John. Did what was it the judge actually said to him when he?
Well, that's the difficulty. So Danny Bumping saw him and took an affidavit, and fair play to him. It covered all the points, but
what we really wanted was a statutory declaration which is stronger. And we wanted a statutory declaration to confirm that Roger had been in lawful rebellion for a long time, and that he was claiming it as his defence to all his liability orders. I think he got 3, 4, 5, I don't know. And the reason you can use this defence to being issued with a liability order is this. It's not just individuals that can declare defiance. Barons and lords can do it for the whole country.
Right.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, members of the House, all members of the House Lords are barons, because the junior rank is baron, and then one up is earl, and then there's viscount, and then marquess and so on. But in the same way as all members of the police force are constables, although some have ranks, sergeants and inspectors and so on, they're all constables. Except the chief constable, incidentally, because he's a magistrate and he hasn't got a policeman's power of arrest. There we are. They never leave the office, so it doesn't matter. So as far as Roger's concerned, he was entitled to claim diffidatio, being in rebellion, and also he became aware of the Barons Committee in 2000.